All right, let's talk about dividends. For some people, they're a reward for sticking with a company. For others, it's a sign that maybe the company's best days are behind it. But what's really going on? Today, we're going to break it all down, consultant style. We're going to give you a framework to look past just the numbers and see the real strategy playing out.
So that's the big question, right? Is that dividend check a sign of a super healthy, stable company that's sharing the wealth with you? Or is it a bit of a red flag? A sign that they've run out of big ideas and don't know what else to do with their cash? Look, the answer isn't always black and white, but once you have the right framework, you'll know exactly what to look for.
So here's our game plan. We'll start with the fundamentals, the what and the how. Then we'll get into the really juicy stuff, the why, the big strategic decisions behind it all. And we'll wrap up with the most important part, the so what all of this actually means for you and your portfolio.
All right, let's kick things off with our first pillar, the what. Before we dive into strategy, we've got to make sure we're all on the same page. Let's lock in the foundations.
So what exactly is a dividend? Let's be super clear here. This isn't just free money appearing out of thin air. It's a slice of the company's actual hard-earned profits that they're sending back to you, the shareholder. And the decision to cut that slice and how big it's going to be, that comes from the very top, the board of directors. You can think of it as your piece of the pie for helping fund their success.
Now, when you hear the word dividend, you're probably thinking of cash, right? Money hitting your brokerage account. And yeah, that's definitely the most common way. But companies do have a few other tricks up their sleeve. Sometimes they'll pay you in more stock. Or, let's say they have a huge one-off success, like selling a part of their business. They might issue what's called a special dividend. It's like a one-time bonus. It's really important to know these different flavors exist.
Okay, so we know what a dividend is, but how does the money actually move from their vaults to your wallet? That brings us to our second pillar, the how. This is where we get into the nuts and bolts, the operational timeline. And trust me, it's a very precise dance.
This might look like just 4 dates on a calendar, but it's actually a really clever system designed to answer one simple question: who gets the check? It all kicks off with the announcement date, but the real magic happens with the next two working together, the ex-dividend date and the record date. These two create the official cutoff, so there's absolutely no confusion about who owned the stock at the crucial moment. And then, of course, you've got the payment date, which is pretty self-explanatory. That's when you get paid.
Okay, listen up, because if you take away only one thing from this section, this is it. The ex-dividend date is everything for a buyer. This is the day the stock officially starts trading without the right to that next dividend payment. So to get that cash, you have to own the stock before this date. I'll say it again. Buy it on or after the X date, and the person who sold it to you gets the dividend, not you. It's a simple rule, but it catches so many people out.
We've got the what and the how locked down. Now we get to my favorite part, the why. Why do some companies pay dividends like clockwork while others act like it's the last thing they'd ever do? This isn't just some bean counter decision, you guys. This is a massive strategic choice about the future of the entire company.
And this right here, this is the absolute heart of the issue. When a company makes a profit, it faces a fundamental choice with every single dollar. Do we hand it back to our shareholders as a dividend, signal that we're healthy, stable, and profitable? Or do we take that same dollar and reinvest it back into the business to fund R&D, expand, and chase even bigger growth down the road? It's that classic trade-off. Do you want a guaranteed reward now or the potential for a much bigger reward later?
So where do you typically see these dividend payers? Well, they're usually in the big, mature, stable industries. Think about it. Utilities, big banks, major pharma companies. These guys aren't really the high-flying startups anymore. They're more like giant cash machines. They generate steady, predictable profits year after year, and paying a dividend is the perfect way to reward investors who are in it for the reliable income, not for explosive growth.
And then you have the other side of the coin, the non-payers. This is the world of tech, biotech, and pretty much any young company in what we'd call hyper-growth mode. For them, every penny of profit is like rocket fuel. They need it to innovate, to scale, to crush the competition. Their investors know the deal. They're not looking for a quarterly check. They're betting that the company will use that cash to become the next giant, and their payoff will come from the stock price going to the moon.
Okay, theory's great, but let's bring this home. Let's make it real. That brings us to our final and honestly our most important pillar, the so what. What does all this mean for you, the investor? How do you actually use this framework to make better decisions with your own money?
All right, here's a little mechanical quirk that catches a lot of people by surprise. On that all-important ex-dividend date, the stock's price will almost always drop by roughly the amount of the dividend. So in this example, if a $62 stock is about to pay a $2 dividend, don't be shocked when it opens at $60 on the X date. The stock isn't crashing, it's just simple math. That $2 didn't vanish, it just moved from being part of the company's value to being cash that's heading to your account.
And that little price drop is actually the foundation for this really famous, even Nobel Prize-winning academic theory. Miller and Modigliani basically argued that, in a perfect world, a company's dividend policy is, well, totally irrelevant. Just think about it for a second. Whether the company gives you $2 in cash and the stock becomes worth $60, or they keep the $2 and the stock is worth $62, your total net worth is exactly the same either way. It's a bit of a head-scratcher, but it's a really powerful idea.
But, and this is a huge but, we don't live in a perfect academic laboratory. In the real world, investors are humans. Things like taxes, transaction costs, and just pure emotion play a massive role. A company that consistently pays and raises its dividend sends a huge signal of confidence and stability. On the flip side, what happens when a company cuts its dividend? Whoa, that's like a fire alarm for investors. They see it as a sign of deep trouble, and they often flee. So in the real world, the signal a dividend sends can often matter way more than the actual cash itself.
So if you're going to analyze a dividend stock, you need the right tools. It's so easy to just get mesmerized by a high dividend yield, but you can't stop there. You've also got to look at the dividend rate, or DPS, to see the actual dollars and cents you're getting per share. And most importantly, you have to look at the total return. That's the whole shebang. It combines the dividend cash with any change in the stock's price. Because let's be honest, a 10% yield doesn't mean a thing if the stock price drops 30%, right?
All right, let's bring it all together. We've gone through the what, the how, the why, and the so what. Now let's synthesize all of this into one clear, actionable conclusion.
So here's the bottom line. Remember that paying a dividend is a choice, it's not a requirement. For you as a buyer, that ex-dividend date is king. And most of all, see a dividend for what it is. It's a reflection of a company's past performance and a huge clue about its future strategy. You have to look beyond just the yield to really understand the story the company is telling you.
So from now on, when you see a dividend announcement, what are you going to see? Just a simple payment? Or, now that you have this framework, will you see the deeper, more complex story of where that company has been and, more importantly, where it's planning to go? I think you know the answer.